Where to start my story? There are so many important and impactful things and events that have happened to me that starting at my birth is the only way to highlight everything that has happened. We start off in Las Tunas, Cuba. Now, I don't have any recollection of this because, well, I was a baby, but my mom doesn't stop talking about how the doctors kept saying how tall I was and how tall I would be. One of my parents' favorite stories to tell me is about how when one of the doctors came in, they were shocked at how tall I was, and so they asked my parents if they were sure that I was their child. Of course, they answered yes, but that's just a funny little story that they love to tell me. Fast forward about a year and a half to when my parents get their refugee status approved and were allowed to fly over to the U.S. legally. I still thank my parents endlessly. Every now and then, I sit down and look at the old pictures of my family in Cuba, and I really can't imagine what my life would be if we were still over there. I especially get emotional and touched when I see the pictures of those small apartments and those teeny houses that we first lived in, and seeing the smile on my parents' faces when they were honestly still thinking about what they were going to feed us that day. Now, I finally became old enough to go to pre-K, sadly, and my mom opts to send me to Forest City. If you're Hispanic, there's an 80% chance that you went to Forest City at some point in your life, whether it's when you were young or when you were older, so this isn't really surprising to me. Now, I am kind of glad that they sent me to Forest City because I still have some friends that I keep in touch with every now and then. And it's interesting to see how going to a different school can change your life so drastically and so completely. And that even though you're living 15 minutes away, you can still be turned into a completely different person. Enough of that. Let's be real. I am so happy that they transferred me to Forest Lake relatively soon. First grade to be exact. By them moving me over at the time that they did, they saved me through the rough transition of changing schools when you're older. Having to deal with moody teenagers' feelings and fitting in with them can be really difficult. So by them moving me over to Fleece so early, I kind of got to bypass that awkward acne stage and get straight into having lifelong friends that I've formed so far. My parents had a tough time settling into one church, mostly because of family problems, so we were left slightly alienated and alone when it came to the church we went to. But we finally landed at Genesis Adventista, the church that saw me grow up. They were responsible for keeping me on track and did wonders for my maturity since I was in Pathfinders from a young age. I say Pathfinders, but the entire club was me, my brother, and two of our friends. Regardless, we still had a great time, and those are still my fondest memories. We stayed at Genesis for as long as my brother was at Fleece. For some reason, once he graduated and I moved into middle school, we both kind of got tired of the Hispanic atmosphere. We started relating more with the American lifestyle, and the Hispanic churches were becoming more and more difficult to endure. The long, monotonous services and the 4-hour sermons didn't really help much either. We didn't appreciate how the people in the church were always trying to one-up each other, like if it was a popularity contest. My brother and I understood that this didn't really promote a healthy worship experience or a healthy worship atmosphere, so we did our best to stay away from it, which was becoming more and more difficult because the people in the church were always trying to be better than us. We understood that this is how a lot of Hispanics act because this is part of their culture, so my brother and I didn't really take it to heart, but it was becoming more and more difficult to put up with it, so that is one of the main reasons we decided to transfer. We knew we wanted to leave Hennessy's, but we weren't sure what church we were going to go to. So after about a year of going to different churches, my parents finally decided to settle into the Filipino church. Don't ask me why. I think it's because they have free food after every service. My brother and I were not happy at this church. It was full of old people that spoke 5 words per minute and lulled you to sleep with everything they said, which didn't sit well with my parents. If you want to get your cheeks clapped, sleep through a church service with a Hispanic parent. After a while of using my strongest persuasion powers, my parents finally let us go to the churches we wanted to. My brother chose to go to Florida Hospital, and I chose to go to Forest Lake. About the same time that I went back to Forest Lake is when I started my 7th grade year, which in my opinion is one of the most eventful years in my life. I say that for many reasons, including Una Voce, which I'll touch on later. But the main reason is because of this Bible class. Mr. McFadden's unorthodox way of teaching was like a bucket of ice water to me. I had no idea how much I'd get into the discussions we had in class and how passionate I really was about these topics, since the past years of Bible class hadn't really had anything to do with your personal relationship with God. They were really just about memorizing the Bible verse and finishing the worksheets on time and getting them in. I really appreciate Mr. McFadden focusing on our personal relationship with God because that's what really matters.
Especially because we just end up forgetting the memory verses the next week.
Even though I was really passionate about these topics in class, once the bell rung, those feelings wore off and I really didn't care about the topics anymore. This is when Unavochi comes into this story. Building a strong relationship with Colin helped me a lot because he invited me to the youth group at Forest Lake, which is what I wanted, a chance outside of school to spend time thinking about God. Summer passes and nothing very eventful happens. I'm spending some time every now and then to read the Bible, but nothing very consistent. My 8th grade year starts, and it's a completely different experience than my 7th grade year. My 8th grade friends had told me to brace myself because it was going to be much harder than 7th grade, and they were very much right. It was like a roller coaster compared to my 7th grade year with all the ups and downs when it comes to schoolwork, and so I'm glad that I braced myself and became ready in the summer of 7th grade. It was sometime at the beginning of the year where I was reading Proverbs and I stumbled upon Proverbs 3:3, which reads, "Let not mercy and truth leave you. Bind them around thy neck, write them upon the tablet of thine heart." Amongst all the singing in the rain practices, which I honestly don't think I could have gotten through without Clark and Sebi, and the NJHS meetings that drove me absolutely crazy, this verse was like a breath of fresh air to me. It reminded me to stay calm and to keep my head up, and to not let the current events skew my priorities. It also helped me not to be overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Fast forward to present day. I'm not even close, and I repeat, I'm not even close to where I want to be spiritually. I'm setting myself up pretty well for the future with youth council and all, but I need to start taking initiative. I need to start reading and praying now, not later. I need to stop putting it off and just start. It's tough to be a leader, which when I look around is the path that I'm heading down, and not have my priorities set on God. He's the one that's going to keep me sane and concentrated. And right now, I'm not spending nearly enough time developing a relationship with God for Him to feel that I even want His help. There's stuff that I currently do that I'm not very proud of, and the only way I get over my current obstacles is to set my eyes upon Him. I need to just surrender all and to live one day at a time.